We eat French fries all the time, all over the place, and we don't give much thought to how they're made. The truth is that the science behind French fries, and frying in general, is more complicated than you might think, and it all has to do with temperature. The classic recipe for fries with a crispy exterior and creamy interiors calls for frying the potatoes twice. Now, the first frying at a low temperature of usually 250 to 275 degrees Fahrenheit gently cooks the potatoes through so that the centers turn creamy. Now, the second frying at 350 to 375 degrees Fahrenheit crisps the exterior and creates that brown crust that makes fries so tasty. So, it sounds simple enough, but before we get to cooking, let's talk a little bit more about oil and frying. Though counterintuitive, frying is actually considered a dry cooking method, just like roasting or grilling. In hot oil, water trapped within the potato turns to steam and escapes. Now, we've all seen bubbles produced as soon as we place food in hot fat. The oil isn't boiling, it's just moisture escaping. Now, when steam escapes, it leaves small holes behind, which then fill with oil. The amount of oil that a French fry absorbs is directly proportional to the amount of water that exits. It turns out that this exchange of water for oil is key to making good fries. Why? If the oil doesn't get hot enough to drive off sufficient moisture and then take its place, we run into two big problems. First, the exterior of the fry never climbs above the boiling point of water, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. For a brown, flavorful crust to form, we need to reach at least 300 degrees Fahrenheit for browning reactions such as caramelization and the Maillard reaction to really kick into gear. Second, if the outer crust isn't able to crisp and absorb a sufficient amount of oil, there's little to keep the moisture that's still in the potato from migrating to the outer edge and turning it soggy. So, hot oil is clearly important for frying, but there are some important limits: the flash point and the smoke point. Now, the flash point is the temperature at which an oil vaporizes into an ignitable gas. For refined vegetable oils, this is usually in the range of 600 to 700 degrees. That's a serious safety issue, but one we rarely run into the home kitchen as long as we're keeping an eye on the pot. From a culinary perspective, the smoke point of the oil is just as important. When an oil is smoking, it's an indicator that the chemical structure of the oil is degrading. Now, this change can impart off flavors to fried foods. An oil's smoke point depends upon its level of refinement. So in general, the more refined the oil, the higher the smoke point. So for example, if you have unrefined extra virgin olive oil, it may smoke around 400 degrees Fahrenheit, while refined peanut oil won't smoke until about 450 degrees. For these reasons, frying generally happens in oil that is between 300 and 400 degrees Fahrenheit. Having an accurate thermometer to monitor the temperature is key. A digital thermometer like this one works really well for keeping track of the temperature. So now we know the basics of frying and dealing with oil. Let's talk about our recipe. So frying once, draining, reheating the oil, and frying again is pretty cumbersome and messy. It's not something you really want to do at home, especially if you have to do it in batches in order to make enough fries. In the test kitchen, we use a method that eliminates this hassle by simply throwing sliced potatoes into a pot of room temperature oil and turning on the heat. As the oil warms, the interior cooks through and water begins to escape from the potato, just as it would in the traditional first fry. As the oil continues to heat up, the fries begin to crisp and brown. This part of the process mimics the second high heat fry. Instead of tossing fries into hot oil, retrieving them twice, we start with cold oil and remove the fries just once when they're done. The right tools for the job are a wide, heavy Dutch oven like this one here, a wire skimmer for removing the fries, and a wire rack set in a rimmed baking sheet for the finished fries to drain on. Now, a heavy cast iron pot like this helps regulate the transfer of heat to the oil. Makes the oil temperature more stable and predictable. So in terms of potatoes, we like Yukon Golds for this recipe. Russets with their high starch content are the classic choice for French fries. However, our slower cold fry method causes a lot of starch molecules in the potatoes to burst and can lead to a final product that is more leathery than crisp when using russets. Using Yukon Golds, which are a bit less starchy than russets, solves the problem completely. So what I'm going to do is square off my potatoes. Now, if you don't care about having perfect shaped French fries, you can skip this step. I'm giving myself a rough rectangle to work with. Now from here, I'm going to cut my potatoes into 1/4 inch thick planks, and then I'm going to cut those into 1/4 inch thick batons. Now, Yukon Golds have really nice soft skins, so we're actually able to leave them on here. Now let's talk a little bit about oil. Our top choice for deep frying is peanut oil, which we found produces especially light and crispy fried foods. But you can use any vegetable oil. Now for a close equivalent to flavorful lard, try adding a tablespoon of strained bacon grease per quart of oil. It gives a lot of nice flavor. So what I'm going to do is add my cut potatoes directly to 6 cups of room temperature peanut oil. Now this method also allows you to use less oil. Okay, so the fries are submerged in the oil. What I'll do now is turn the heat to high, and I'm going to cook the potatoes until the water exiting the fries mimics a pot of boiling water, which should take about 5 minutes. Okay, so our oil looks like it's boiling. At this point, I'll let the fries cook this way until they're beginning to firm up, about 15 minutes. Now you don't want to stir the potatoes at this point because they're not firm yet. They're very soft and they're prone to breaking. Okay, so these fries have been going for about 15 minutes. Now what I'm going to do is use some tongs to stir them. They've got a little bit of a coating on the outside, so they're not going to fall apart, but they haven't really taken on much color. A few of the fries may have stuck to the bottom, but they come off quite easily. Okay, so now I'm going to give them about 5 to 10 more minutes. At this point, they're going to brown really quickly. Once they're golden and crisp, I'm going to take them out. Okay, so these fries went another about 10 minutes. They're nice and golden and crispy, so I'm going to transfer them with my wire skimmer to the wire rack. Okay, and now finally, while they're still piping hot, I'm going to season them with kosher salt. Now kosher salt, because of its larger crystal size, is a lot easier to distribute. So I can sprinkle it from up high and get a nice even coating on the fries. Because of its larger crystal size, it's also a little bit more noticeable, so it kind of retains some of its texture. All right, those look good. Nice crispy exterior, nice and creamy on the inside, and really not all that much work. Never enough salt. Now you may be thinking that if potatoes go into cold oil and then spend almost 30 minutes frying, they must contain more oil than traditionally cooked fries. In fact, the very opposite is true. Now remember that oil absorption is directly proportional to moisture escape. Now, this gentler frying method, where the oil never gets much above 300 degrees, drives off a lot less water. That translates to roughly 1/3 less absorbed oil. So, not only are these fries easier to make, they're also healthier to boot. So besides eating your home-cooked fries, the last thing you need to do is cool your oil completely, strain it of any solid matter, and then store it in the freezer for next time. The dark, cold freezer limits oxidation and slows rancidity. So there you go, the easiest French fries you'll ever make.